You're listening to The Dental Guys, Episode 4. Let's set some teeth, baby. This week, John and Wes discuss their denture protocols and what they do whenever they see a denture patient. We also discuss the largest dental company in the world. And don't forget the product and tip of the week. It's all coming up this week on The Dental Guys. Welcome to The Dental Guys. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy, and this is John, the Dental Guy. How you doing, John, today?
Man, I'm doing great. And Wes, how's your week been going?
Man, it's been fantastic. And, just doing dentistry like normally, seeing patients every day. And, doing family stuff on the weekend. But things are getting a little interesting around the dental office.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's not really business as usual at your place. I heard you got a big project coming up, right?
Big project coming up. We settled on a piece of property earlier this year to move our practice to. It's actually not very far from our current location. It's right up the road. Thank the Lord for that. So we're not going to deal with losing patients. But we're building a building, and I've been in this location now for over 10 years, basically renting a space. We did a build out, and now we're looking to own our own place, and which is real exciting. But the thing about it is that the practice goes on, and the building's being built.
Yep.
And so I know you've been through some of this too. Schematic design phase is kind of what we're going through right now.
Yep.
And, it's one of those things. You're trying to decide, well, how many operatories do you want? Do you want to use cabinetry, or do you want to have custom cabinetry built? That kind of thing. So,
it's stressful. I mean, it's a lot of decisions. I mean, it's like building a house, except it's times two maybe, because you have to decide what you want it to feel like, what you want it to look like, and then how you want it to function. And some of the same things you think about building a home, but really a lot more things, because it's not something you can just say, I know how to do this because I know what I want my house to feel like. You and I we know dentistry, but we don't know dental office design like the dental office design people do. And you really have to learn, what kind of tile should I buy for a dental office, or carpet, or furniture, what about light and sun, and where's the sun come in? Should it come in through the back windows in the morning or the front? There's just so much stuff.
It's crazy because all those things play a role. Like, I remember whenever we opened our practice, how the sun came in, and at a certain time during the year, the sun would hit the hygiene patient like right in the eyeball. Now, that kind of stuff, you got to think about. You got to think about that. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, just that one thing. I remember when we were building and we had our architect talking to us about this stuff, and he's like, well, what do you want the light pattern to be in the hallway?
Right.
He showed us this reflected schematic of the ceiling of where he was thinking about putting the lights, and how the lights the shadows that it would cast. And do you want it to be more like a medical office, or do you want it to be more like a house, in terms of how it makes you feel when you walk into practice? And what about controlling sound from operatory to operatory, or from operatory to the reception area? And, these are just how many outlets do you want in the wall?
Yeah, I know you're telling me this. Like GFC and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the rules and regs. I got an email the other day about drainage.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, good thing we're in a development, like a medical development, where we have common drainage, we have a common pond, but we have to pay for the maintenance of that pond. And I think my portion of that is like 7.42%. If there was an issue that had to be addressed, I would cover 7% of whatever the cost would be. It's only legitimate that you help pay for that situation because you have ponds now. You have ponds.
Yeah, you got to think about all this stuff.
Runoff.
It's just runoff, and all these engineers and architects and stuff. But it's exciting on the other hand, because you think, hey, this could be my place. It could become something that I could own, and obviously this could be good financially. It could be good for patients, and you make it what you want, and you kind of break free of the rent thing, which is great. But man, not an easy job.
Well, you do trade some headache for that, and that's a great topic for maybe one of our episodes, is to go in maybe to the process throughout this year
Yeah.
I'm going to document this thing. And maybe at the end of it, next year, a year from now, we'll come back and do an episode on the actual construction. And we could even break that out into several different, topics, things like that, even with a final tour and maybe an on-site podcast.
That'd be cool. I mean,
that
because
would
there's
be
lots,
really cool.
lots of people that are looking at this. I think that's it's a common question that comes up with people about the long term, and so it'd be a very interesting topic to come up with and to talk about when it makes financial sense. Anyway,
but the dentistry must go on, So
Yeah,
I mean,
man,
it's like everyday dentistry. So you're
you
moving,
can't-
but yet, hey, guess what?
Yeah, you don't have time to you can't say, oh, I'll be back in 25 minutes. I got to go
Right.
check and make sure it's the right size window, So you got to have good people,
Can you imagine? Hey, let me numb this patient up, and then I'm going to run down the street and check on the color that they put on the wall.
We had it happen a couple times where
Are
we're
you
like
kidding me?
in the middle of the day, they're calling us and they're like, yeah, we got a question about, how, I mean, they have schematics, but still there's questions about specific things. Is this
Right.
exactly where you want the dental chair to go? Exactly where you want it to go? Because everything in the room has to be keyed to that. So
Can you imagine?
it's
Oh my
just,
goodness.
Yeah, and so anyway, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it.
But the show today is not going to be about building because we really want to get your mind off of building, so you don't have to think about that because you have to think about that all the time. So we're going to talk about today is a topic that I think pretty much everybody that's listening to this show that is a dentist or lab technician or anybody who has any interest in dentistry is going to be something that's going to matter to them, and that's dentures. And dentures are something.
That's the thing, though, John, is like how many times does a dental school student say, man, I hate dentures? I mean, like literally, honestly, you and I know we geek out on stuff like this.
Sure.
But the consensus, though, is like, I hate dentures.
There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of dentures.
And I think that dental schools have a tough. I used to, my tune definitely changed after being out of school, and I know yours did too. About a lot of things that we were taught in school, because when you're getting taught and you're just hammered with all this stuff, you just think, oh, come on, these people are just there to make my life miserable, and some of them were. Some of them were. That some of them were just unhappy.
Maybe a
people.
slap on the hand, right, John?
Right. Yeah, exactly. But
that's a story to tell.
Yeah, that's right. But there's a lot of that you look at dentures and you think, how do you teach a kid that's in school how to set dentures? And you start to realize really that dentures are, and we won't go too far down this road, but just to realize that dentures are really everything as far as understanding of function, aesthetics, phonetics, where teeth need to go in the face. I mean, that's a huge part of what we do, even with composite, with porcelain, but dentures are becoming a bigger part, I think, of most practices that are actively pursuing those patients.
Yeah, and why
you had
is
some
that?
good, you had some good stats on that, right?
Well, our dentulism rates are still kind of on the increase. And why would that be? Well, it's all about the baby boomers.
Yeah, those baby boomers, man.
Holy smokes. I mean, that's who, you're going to be treating here, pretty heavily in the denture world. And so, like, just looking at some statistics here, 26% of all adults are completely edentulous by age 65.
Wow.
So that means no teeth. 26%.
26%. That's, it's just crazy how many
that
people
seems
that is.
high.
Yeah.
It seems high, but when you start to really dive down and where this stuff comes from, it's really legit. By age 75, the number rises to 44%. So now the average life expectancy today in the United States is between 80 and 88, depending on who you talk to. So, women can live to be about 85, men about 83. And that's who, so a 75-year-old comes into your office, there's a good chance that they're going to be completely edentulous. And so that means you're going to be treatment planning dentures in your practice. And it's going to be for a good while. Now, yes, people are keeping their teeth longer.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that the total edentulism occurs in 10.5% of the U.S. population. That's about 18 million people.
Okay.
And another 7%, which is about 12 million people, are totally edentulous in one arch. So you're at least doing some kind of a combination case, and hopefully that's an upper denture, because we all know that lower dentures are terrible for patients, and we'll talk a little bit about protocol for that and what you should be treatment planning. So think about this: completely edentulous in America in two arches, that's 18 million people, and 12 million people are completely edentulous in at least one arch. And then you've got the remaining population. Now, that's not talking about partial edentulism, meaning like for partials, removable partial dentures, those types. That's a whole nother topic. So as we live longer, what's being said is that the number of adults requiring complete denture is expected to increase. Say, for instance, in 1991, there were 33.6 million people that were needing dentures. In 2020, it is said that there will be 37.9 million people needing dentures.
Wow.
So that's pretty significant, and that's coming straight from the Journal of Prosthodontic Dentistry.
So does that mean that we just need more affordable dentures type places? Is that
well, we see these places and they aren't going away. In fact, we're seeing them pop up more. Now, I know from where I came from in a small hometown, America, there was your guy in your backyard, you know, the denturist, the illegal denture. Now, what that is morphed into is really they cracked down on that. And they've turned that into a dentures in the day type situation, where you do have a proctoring dentist over a lab technician that's doing a lot of the dentistry in the office. And that's totally fine, because wouldn't it be great if we could all employ a lab guy? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing in this dentures in a day type situation. The only way they can do this is if they have an on-site lab technician that is fluent in how to flask and pack dentures, or some type of Ivacap technique, whatever that might be. That's the only way that this can happen. So dentures in a day aren't going away.
Yeah,
and so in some ways that's not a good thing. In some ways, maybe you are going to help some people.
There's some people that can go there and get a denture that might otherwise have no access to that.
Right.
And you know, so there's some good about that, definitely, I think. But you know, unfortunately, when you look at something from a purely business model standpoint, what we see, you know, and in our area of the country, and I think in a lot of areas of the country, but in our area in particular, dentulism rates are probably a little higher, and in the Southeast United States. And you know, these places that have popped up, it's very interesting to look at what they're actually doing, because you look again, and we started this conversation talking about dental school. So what are these places actually doing when they're making, say, you know, dentures in a day? And it's interesting to talk about, you know, what makes this able to be sold for $400 for a set of dentures. You know, what do they do? And you know,
that's unbelievable. How do they even pull that off? Now, what's your thoughts on that?
I remember seeing some of the you know, videos of this. I've watched some videos on it. I've talked to a lab technician who is a removable lab technician that has done some work, kind of some overflow work from their clinics. When they have too much work, they send stuff to him. And basically what he says, and it's not, you know, I don't know about every clinic, so I can't say everybody's doing it this way, but I can say this place, which is a well-known corporate place, basically what they do, patient comes in, assistant takes an impression, the dentist, I'm sure they check every impression.
Surely.
Let's just say that.
I mean, they must.
Anyway, so the assistant takes the impression, the dentist checks it, and then the lab takes over at that point. And basically they do they do, you know, some type of rudimentary record of some kind of the occlusion. If it's complete dentures, it's, you know, they do in some cases a wax rim type of thing, but it's kind of done with a heat moldable type of wax rim that's not really wax. It's basically something that just heat up and kind of form and get it close enough just so they can get some kind of bite. And then they have teeth in wax.
Really?
And they'll
like
do
a full arch,
like small, medium, large type of situation. And they kind of put it in there, and they sort of like
plastic,
you know,
or porcelain, or
it's plastic. It's plastic.
So
but
plastic teeth for a $400 set of dentures, you're not getting like True Bite.
No,
you're not getting like Blue Line.
No, we're not talking Funari's teeth here. You know, we're talking you're getting whatever they have on the shelf that, you know, comes straight out of wherever. And So they put these things in this sort of like small, medium, large type of thing. They kind of put it in there. They no regard to, any of the principles of, function, aesthetics, phonetics. It's really just, hey, you got some teeth. And then they immediately go right to processing. So there's no real trying. It's just like, let's get something that's going to basically go around where this arch is. They're doing it, most of this on just the model, not really much on the person. The person's there for the impression. I think they're there for this little wax rim. And then they just pretty much take it to the lab. And the lab selects teeth not based on the face at all, based upon, the shape of the arch and the bite. And then that gets processed that day. So does it work? Well, I've seen some interesting things. I've seen cases come through where retention is good, and maxillary dentures, as we all know, you can overcome so much with just suction.
I have some pictures of a case where a patient went to Dentures, like in a day type place.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll put those right up right now. And if you look there, John, in that folder,
yep.
You can actually see under that folder there where it says step 1 evaluate. Mm-hmm. And look at the retracted shot. Those are dentures in a day teeth.
Gotcha.
And so pretty much a plastic tooth.
Yep.
There's no festooning here.
Right.
Very little retention to the tooth in the acrylic. You can see how fast this was done.
Yeah, exactly.
Very fast. But actually not a bad set of dentures.
No. I
mean, it wasn't bad.
No, it's not horrible. And you can, there's some good, like I say, there's some good things. It's definitely better than nothing for some of these people. Now, I've also seen other extremes where it actually is it is significantly worse. We have people that, they can't wear them. They're canted, they're tilted. And then you've got, a lot of sore spot problems and all that. And so these people come in and they've spent their $400. And the interesting business model is that they'll do, usually no adjustments are included in this. So then they charge $65 an adjustment. And so, if the patient wants to go back, sure, we'll be happy to see you, $65 each time.
Right. So we're not seeing these places go away, and there is a place for them. I mean, like I've taken teeth out in extraction clinics across the area that we're in, and pretty much they ask me, when can I go get my teeth? And I'm like, well, what are you thinking about doing? Well, I'm going to go to a place where they make dentures in a day, and I'm like, you need to wait a certain period of time after you heal, and that's where most of these people are going that are in that population that really can't afford a higher end type denture, which you and I try to provide one type of denture. I'm not providing, a low end set, a medium set. I provide one level of denture.
No ABC dentures.
There's no an ABC denture, and the laboratory that I'm using, they know that I want the top of the line teeth and in our setup. So, John, tell us a little bit about your process of, and because we differ on this a little bit.
Sure.
On
we do
how
things
we go
differently. Yeah. So what I do, and again, going back to what you learned in dental school, there's good things about that. And I do some of the same things that I learned in school. But what I've kind of taken is some of the techniques I learned in school and adapted them using some CE that I've taken over the years. So basically what I'm doing is the classic custom tray, and with VPS impression. So I'm using basically a technique that I was taught by Joe Masad, and so you use a good quality edentulous tray, and that's huge, good quality edentulous tray, and Masad makes some great trays. There's other trays out there. So you need an edentulous tray that can give you something quality. And depending on what you want to do, either you're going to make kind of try to make your own custom tray that day. What I do is just take a preliminary impression.
So are you using an alginate to take a preliminary impression on an edentulous metal stock tray, or what are you doing?
No, I use the Masad edentulous trays to just take a preliminary impression. And I've also tried other edentulous trays.
So with alginate then, you're not...
Right, with alginate. And so I'm basically just trying to get all of my borders as well defined as I can so that I can make an even better custom tray. And, Masad teaches how to use his trays for the custom tray, to basically make a custom tray. And that technique I think can work too, but it's very, very sensitive to being perfect. I find that if I just get my borders in alginate, And then I go to the lab and have the lab make me a custom tray that I get better results with that technique.
It's good.
So then I come back with a custom tray, take a border molded, usually 3-step impression. Again, using kind of massage technique and making sure that there's good tissue stops, good borders, and then a wash. And using that as my guide as far as, do I get good retention for my impression? When we know we're getting good retention, we send that off, and then go through wax rim try-in, which is the thing I probably spend the most time on, is my wax rims and JRR, and then an aesthetic try-in, and depending on what we see there.
I'm like grading you right now.
Yeah, you feel like you're...
You can tell that. That's the way we've always been with each other.
I know,
like,
exactly.
Why am I saying good? Like, stupid. Stop educating, Wes.
Well, it's just how we are. But
dental guys like to teach.
I know, exactly. You can't turn that off.
So you went through a certain process, basically kind of like the classic process.
It's pretty classic.
An alginate edentulous impression, a massage border molded, whether you're using cake compound or what, you're using some type of a firm border molding material.
Right.
You're cutting back that maybe 1 millimeter or 2.
Exactly.
Based on the mobility of the tissues.
Yep.
And you're getting some good tripod, like, good hard tissue stops across the ridges.
Make sure there's no burn through. Make sure everything is in impression.
And then you're relining that.
Right.
To give you a really good washed impression of the tissues, and use different types of washes. And I know with Masad, I've done it myself, to do this. Now, and then after that, you go through a wax rim. The lab fabricates that. You don't fabricate that, do you, John?
No, the lab fabricates the wax rim. And then I do use an allometer and papillometer when I'm doing my wax rim. I'm a big fan of that.
Now, do you give that to them prior to the allometer, papillometer?
I do now. I used to not.
I'm that same way. I'll admit to you that now it's more important.
Yep, because they can already have my wax rim
the right position,
much closer. Yeah, than what I thought.
Just make sure you're using the right papillometer your lab's using. Okay,
yes.
So get this story. I got to tell a quick story about this.
Okay.
So I send this the papillometer reading. And I get back and I'm like, what in the world has just went down here? Because here it is. And I take a picture of it and I send it to the lab guy. And we're going to have both you and I use the same prost guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on here? And he was like, dude, I don't even understand this. We did it right. I saw it. He's like crying because he's like trying to make this right for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, something is wrong. He was like, send me your papillometer.
Yeah.
Okay, so the papillometer that he had in his lab was not the same papillometer that I had in my office.
That's bad.
And so I was like, dude, throw mine away and give me what you're using.
Yep.
Because they weren't. They were off. They were arbitrary numbers what he had, which is fine as long as you have some way.
You just have to have the same numbers.
Right.
Yeah. Allometer, papillometer, JRR, go through the process and then deliver. So that's my technique. It's very much a classic technique with just a few little modifications from the side. And tell what about you, Wes? Go through your technique. Very different.
I went through a lot of different iterations. I was in dental school. I was taught processed bases. I hooked up with a prosthodontist, and basically we would go through a alginate impression. Same kind of thing there. We would do a custom tray. The same thing you're talking about there, but before we delivered the wax rim, we would actually process the denture base, okay? Yep. Now, don't do that now, okay? That is a full branching technique, okay? Now I'm doing a modified branching technique, okay? So,
and when you say branching technique, that's popularized by Earl Pound and his camp, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so, and I've kind of filled in some spots with some of the things from other different, other different camps, per se. So, the very first thing you're going to see on the screen is my preliminary and final impression. John, I sent you a picture of that the other day.
Yeah.
And basically, I'm using a material, System 1 and System 2, depending on whether it's a completely or fully edentulous case, and it's a 2-phase alginate material. Now, I will say, if you do this right, it is an amazing material. Now, just like Masad, you can buy stock trays that are sized based on the patient's arch. So you get a series of about 6 trays for the edentulous upper to choose from, and 6 for the lower. So what you're seeing on the one is
This
a
is
tray.
made by who, by the way?
It's made by Ivoclar.
Yeah, just to say that in case you're looking for that out there, that's the website.
And
to
you
go
actually need to call Ivoclar and order it. You can't. Or call your lab, but most people don't even know it exists.
A lot of people don't even know this exists. Yeah.
Right. I didn't know it existed, and a lab guy told me about it. He said, Wes, you need to be doing this for your partial impressions. And I was like, what about dentures? And he was like, dude, it makes the best denture you've ever used. As far as and I was doing massage, just exactly what you were doing. And I was getting good results. So I was like, okay, so let's do this. And so versus having a patient, have a custom tray made, I've been using this. So you see, this is an excellent dental impression. There are some things that could be better. You do have some blebs there, but I mean, for the most part, John, critique this. Tell me, is that a good dental?
I think any lab would be happy with that. I guess that's the way I look at it. Is would the lab get this and be very happy? Yes, they would be very happy. You got all your landmarks.
Now the question is this adequate for the final? Okay. One would argue yes, one would argue no. I'm going to say no, just because I feel like that I'm going to take it a little bit to the next level, okay? So I would go through the same setups that you discussed, where we would do a papillometer at this stage, wax rim, teeth try-in, and then we would process, but I'm going to do what we call a hydrocast technique. Now, what I'm showing you on the screen right now, if you look on the screen, I'm showing a jig that you get back from the lab, and in that jig, the denture, and actually I'm going to show the denture first, okay? Well, there's the jig, and then with the denture setting on the jig, okay? And it's indexed with the teeth. But notice that the denture has been hollow ground, okay, or processed with a spacer. Okay, so Wes, you just took this wonderful alginate impression, and now you're not even going to use the master model? Oh, I'm going to use the master model because the master model is on the other side of that barn door hinge, okay? So hydrocast is a material that I've learned how to use. It's a very technique sensitive. I will put a document on how to use hydrocast technique in the show notes or the comments below.
And if you're using just to interject one thing, if you're using any type of soft reline, tissue conditioner type reline, you've seen a material that at least resembles this in its
soft
handling.
tone by Bosworth.
Right, Linol, those types of materials. Yeah, but hydrocast is very different in terms of its set time and things, right?
Yes, very, very different. And in fact, I follow a specific instruction that was given to me, and that I learned from actually a dental lab technician that showed me actually how to use this. These are his instructions. And so the mixing ratios are a little different.
Yep.
You'll see in there that too thin is bad and too thick is bad. And so we mix this to a honey-like consistency. Actually, I'll pull up there where you see like how it's stringing up from the cup when we mix it, and then that's flowed inside that denture base. This is the final denture, and then we're going to hold vertical, okay? We're going to actually close the barn door hinge over on itself, and there's the master model. You see the blue master model right there that we took the nice alginate against, and then you'll see it sitting down inside a water bath. And so that goes into a water bath for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. The water bath is kind of a lukewarm. And then we go from there to the patient's mouth. So you see I've separated it there, and you see it comes out, and look, there's your border. And you see that. Now it's not perfect, because now I'm going to take this hydrocast, I'm going to put it into the patient's mouth, and I'm actually going through the same speech motions, all the border molding things that you would do during massage technique, during your system 1, system 2 technique, whatever type of impression you're doing, you're going through those molds, those movements. You're having that patient speak a little bit, and then you're going to have them bite with mild to moderate pressure.
Yep.
Now, this is very brief in what we're describing here, because this is a very technique-sensitive thing. So now what happens? Well, you trim the case, okay? So I trim the edges of this a certain manner, and then the patient walks out. So this is where the term walking impression comes from.
Right. Truly functional impression.
Truly functional.
Several days, right?
Right. Actually, the way it works is that they leave my office and they come back in 2 days. That's key.
Okay.
Okay. So I either add or subtract. If there's burnouts, you subtract denture base and then add back some hydrocast because you want the entire reline in hydrocast. And so then you're actually doing a functional reline. Okay, so they walk out and they're going to get and then they're going to come back in 2 days, and then they go another week, and then they go up to 3 weeks because hydrocast doesn't move much beyond 3 weeks. Okay, it's going to reach a kind of a hardness. It's still going to be soft, kind of like a co-soft consistency if you've used that product. Mixed firm, that's about what it gets to be like. But what you get if you do this right is the best denture impression, the best reline you could possibly get. And you've maintained vertical from your try-in all the way through the final.
Right,
And
which is hard to do if you're using
very
soft
difficult
reline
to do.
material to keep your vertical intact. Definitely.
So I do all of my dentures like this now. I would say not all, but 95% of all my prostheses, completely edentulous upper arches and lowers, are like this.
So
Now,
let's talk about why the pros and cons of these two techniques, because they're both.
Well, first of all, John.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. This is time intensive.
Yes.
I'm not making as much money because I'm taking chair time. So that's bad. Okay? I mean, think about this, guys. I just built into another lab fee, a reline, on top of my denture.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about the hours of work that goes into this.
It's crazy.
And you know, you can't, I mean, you can maybe charge more, but you can't charge that much more because the patient doesn't understand that differentiation maybe.
Right, I don't charge for a reline.
Okay.
Okay?
Even though you're doing one.
Even though I'm doing one, it's built into my completely edentulous arch fee.
Okay. But in exchange, you're getting maybe less chance of seeing that patient back for more chair time and adjustments.
You
right?
just hit on the plus.
Okay. So I'm learning what, you know, as you're talking, because I know we've talked about this before, but it kind of makes sense as you're saying that.
Holy smokes, dude. And not only just
you lose
that,
some, but you gain some.
Yeah, because basically your post-ops now have been eliminated.
Right.
Now you're going to do a reline. So what post-ops are you going to do after a reline? Minimal, probably one. I mean, generally when I bring these patients back, they have no sore spots, and most of the time it's because of their bites off just a little bit. But if you do the right insertion techniques and you calibrate their bite, you have none. You just really don't have any sore spots. The biggest sore spots I have are from bite issues. I don't have denture-based extension problems. How can you?
Yeah, you cannot have extension problems with this technique. And that is the thing that seems like that makes this a technique that while it sounds like to me it's not easy to learn how to do this right.
It's not. And it took me years to master it. In fact, I got frustrated several times, and I went back and forth on certain cases that I felt like that I'm like, you know what, I'm not sure about this here.
And the lab has to know what they're doing too, right? Because the lab could screw this up too.
It took me a year. I switched labs.
I mean, I'm looking at that hinge, that jig, that
they had
setup.
to have those made.
Man,
those are
that's
stainless
all
steel, dude.
Custom,
he made
right?
those for me. And I'm like, you know, those are expensive. So
yeah. So what I would say there, I guess maybe my thought is on this, great technique. I think it's amazing. And I think that maybe this is the way that if you can get all these things right, if you can get the lab involved properly.
There's a lot of variables here.
But if you can do it right, it seems like you're going to have less in the end, less chair time due to adjustments. And I think that, you know, when I look at the technique I use, you know, I see that, I mean, I'm getting great fit, not having a lot of adjustment issues, but I know because I'm a big fan of soft relines for tissue conditioning and things, I could see where your technique would, I mean, when I do a soft reline, man, it's awesome because you have a truly functional impression, but not even as good as what you're getting, because my impression material, my soft tissue reline is, you know, tissue conditioner is lasting, you know, it sets within, you know, 2 hours, not days, and you know, not allowing the patient to really go through all the motions that they need to. So now there's some other things that, you know, those techniques are very, very important to learn. You know, learn a technique and learn to do it well. Whether it's classic custom trays, whether it's
you can't just do one
hydrocast.
denture and say I've learned the technique. That's one thing I've learned over the years. Right.
So that's something I've learned too, is that, you know, you have to really commit yourself to something and do it well and not give up on it. I've also seen some interesting things out there with, you know, different ways of doing this, because there's so many ways to make a denture.
Let's talk about digital dentures for a second. We didn't even put that down here. Like, is that really going to happen?
I
it's
saw
close.
some. I think it's getting close. The problem is functional impressions. We're talking about functional impressions, and how do you get
tissue
a functional
movement? I mean, how do you do this with a digital impression machine?
Right. Yeah. How do you hold on. So yeah, exactly. All the stuff that gets the tissue moving doesn't
Give
matter
me a
how.
kiss my finger.
Because you careful now, but you hear the
so
Avident people, and the digital denture people saying, this. Oh, it's so accurate. It's so
They're gluing
accurate.
those teeth in too, man.
Right. Well, that's a whole other issue. But if it is accurate, that's wonderful. But I don't really care about accuracy of a static impression. I care about It's not a crown and bridge impression. We don't want it. We're not dealing with something that's supposed to never
Tooth-borne
move.
partials, yes, but not for functional.
No, if you have
can't
to do
that
movement,
yet. It's
I just
coming.
don't. Yeah, maybe.
It's coming, guys.
I'm still. I would still say, how is it coming? I mean, I would challenge that statement. How
it's going to be hard. Somebody's going to invent something.
They're going to have to put some kind of sensors on the border or something
That's
there.
crazy.
I don't know, but anyway,
you've seen some stuff about Gothic arc tracing too. Now, does that really matter?
Well, Mossad is a big believer in it. So
he's
Gothic
starting to talk
arch,
about this. So tell me
Gothic
about
arch tracing, for those of you guys that don't know, and Wessel put a picture up here as we're talking about it of what a Gothic arch trace looks like. Basically what he does is he has the lower and the upper, and he puts a little, essentially like a metal plate, he calls a strike plate on one, that has a little, almost like a little pen tip, and that ink goes on. Mm-hmm. And essentially as a patient goes through their functional movements, it traces on the upper member the shape of their functioning envelope. And so basically now the lab takes that and they know how far forward and sideways and left and right the patient goes, so they can get those interferences worked out. They know what the envelope of motion is. I mean, it's pretty cool. I don't know how much it really matters. It's this whole idea though that is put together with Mossad with his whole neutral zone technique. You just got to go see him lecture, hear what he has to say. He's definitely one of those guys you want to hear.
I think so.
I don't know how
we
much
talk
of a
about
difference it
people
makes.
that you, as new dental students, and this is not expensive CE. We recommend going and seeing Mossad because he teaches a really good impression technique. Now, John, one of the things that I would hack you on your stuff, and I'll hack me because I used to do Mossad like crazy, and assistants hate it because it's so many materials.
That's
How
true.
many guns that you're using? You got to invest some pretty heavy money into some guns.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
The impression trays are very
But then you look
expensive.
at mine and you're like, what the heck, man? Why is she doing a reline?
That's true.
So what's that? That's a trade-off.
Neither one is cheap. Now let's talk a little bit, just briefly, about lower dentures, because we've been talking about dentures, and we don't want to make it sound like we believe upper and lower dentures are equal.
No,
because
they're not.
If you have a good technique, you can make an excellent upper denture in almost every patient.
What's the number one malpractice suit in dentistry today, John?
Right. We talk about this. It's not talking about implants. It's not presenting an implant treatment plan. And lower dentures are one of the things that I think it's one of the biggest problems. I've seen lawsuits. I personally was involved with a partner in my practice. It was not me, but he was an expert witness in a case where the patient was suing the dentist because they could never wear their denture. They could never wear their lower denture. And the dentist they were suing, and for some reason the malpractice attorney that they was representing this dentist never once brought up implants, never once said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, that you can't wear your denture. We will give you implants and we'll make it better. They didn't even know it existed. And so we should not only know it exists, we should be presenting it to every patient in very early on, back in early 2000s. There was a consensus conference from out of Canada that said that the 2-implant lower denture is the standard of care for the edentulous arch. So this was that was what I was taught when I was in dental school, is that the 2
Now, where's
lower,
that at? Standard of care where? This is the first time I've heard of this.
Oh yeah, well I'll send you the article. We can post it on the show.
Yeah.
Basically this was done back in, I think it was 2002, and it was
13 years ago.
Yeah, in Canada. This was adopted as the standard of care for the edentulous mandibular arch, was a 2-implant retained overdenture. And, why did we not, adopt that in the U.S.? I don't know, probably because of the difference in the way we do medicine, Canada versus the U.S. But I think we should be saying, and I'm definitely telling patients every single time, this is the standard of care in our practice.
And that's what you need to say is don't let this patient drive your treatment plan. Okay. Right. Don't immediately assume that they can't afford it. and
Right.
not present it. Don't be like, so you need a couple dentures. I'm seeing you're here today for dentures, and let's get you worked up for that. And by the way, do you want implants? Okay, no, can't afford that. Let's move on. Now, that is not how you present treatment. You need to be sitting down and explain to them, hey, look, the standard of care, the best prognosis for you, one is, well, a hybrid.
Right.
But let's just say the bare minimum, here's what I say.
The minimum,
bare
that's exactly
minimum
what I
that
say.
you should choose for your lower denture is a 2 implant. And here's what it looks like. And I show them a little model, and I say, take that off
Got
the model.
Yep.
And if they say, well, I can't really afford that, and I say, well, what you're saying yes to is below the standard of care.
Right.
And when
Right.
you say below the standard of care,
we can do a lower denture without implants. You know, it's
Right.
not that it's not possible.
Right.
And we can do it, and I'm willing to do it, but I want them to own that. Like we've talked about many times on the dental
Right.
guys, I want the patient to say, I accept something that's below the standard of care, and now it's their denture instead of
Right.
it being my denture. When I have problems with my locator lower dentures, it's my problem. But
John,
when they
just
have
so
a
they
problem
know
without
whenever
it,
they go back on Monday,
Yeah.
and you walk into the dental office and you say, okay, a dentulous patient walks in and they're saying, you know, I need a new set of dentures. They're edentulated already.
Yep.
And you're asking them, how you doing with your dentures? You know, I do pretty good with my dentures. I always struggle with my lower. That's the typical comment that you get.
All the time.
John, just so that they know, go through just a quick treatment planning session there. 1 minute. I'm going to give you 1 minute of what that would be like. And I'm going to start the timer right now.
Okay. So I would say to the patient first, you know, many people struggle with their lower dentures, and their upper dentures in general tend to be very, very good. And so most people that we see with dentures, the lower is the problem child. That's what I usually tell them. And I tell them the reason why is because we don't have suction. We have this tongue down in the way. Every patient that has dentures understands the difference. And also that we have the problem of a lot of times these patients having lost their teeth and having very little amount of lower bone. So I tell them, you know, here's what we need to do. We have we can secure your denture. The standard of care is 2 implants on the lower jaw. And I show them a model because the model really tells you everything you need to know. And I say, you know, this will prevent the common problem of this popping up, getting dislodged, and you can still clean around it. It works great. If you choose not to do that, there's not a lot more that I can do for your denture. Relining your denture is not necessarily going to make it significantly better. And I just want you to understand, you don't have to do these implants, but I will tell you, it will change your life. It has changed the lives of many of my patients, and I have 3 or 4 people that you can call. I have references and tell them, hey, if you want to call these people, I'll give you some names.
What a great point.
Yeah,
That is so good.
And because you know how it changes their lives, Wes. It changes their lives. And
every patient that you've asked to say, hey, would you mind being one of those patients? Oh, no problem. Have anybody call me.
Right. All the time. They love that. They love that. They love to be your spokesperson.
When you say that to a patient, they're like, really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't need to talk to you, but I believe you.
Yeah, they don't usually ask, but you got to have those people in your back pocket because they're great cheerleaders. And you didn't even do anything. All you did was restore a locator overdenture, which is so simple.
Right.
But these people have their lives changed. Yeah. So I think that's something on Monday. Get a model. Learn about how to restore locators. Any implant rep, if you work with an implant company, hopefully that any implant rep can come into your office and show you how to restore an implant overdenture. If they can't find somebody who can, it's not difficult to do. It is technique sensitive, but it's not difficult.
Let's close out with this. It'll
change the lives.
Yeah, it can change people's lives. And let's close out with this. You know, we've talked a lot about different techniques today and some crazy stuff that's happening in the dental industry when it comes to dentures, digital dentures, Gothic arc tracing, all those things. And you're like, I'm so confused about what John and Wes really do.
Yeah.
We can talk more about this in the comments below. Yes. Ask us questions, tweet us. Listen, I'll be more than happy to send you a point-by-point, how to do this and really give you some pointers on where to go to get trained for this.
Yes.
And but listen, Masad is a great place to start. I would highly recommend that you find the next meeting where he's at, pay the money to go see him. He's not that expensive. It's an all-day lecture, sometimes 2. Very, very good.
It's well worth it.
Now, something happened here about a week or so ago, John, that kind of blew my mind. I woke up to a news feed from CNBC that said that Dentsply had bought Sirona Dental
Yeah.
For $5.5 billion.
Oh, man. So much money.
Overnight, they became the largest dental company in the world. Together,
Wow.
they have about $3.8 billion in sales and $900 million in adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, and all that kind of stuff. So here we have two quote-unquote industry leaders, and Dentsply and Sirona. They're now going to be traded under the stock name in NASDAQ X-Ray. Their name is going to be, I think, Dentsply Sirona is their name. So they're keeping the name. The CEO is now going to become the CEO of Sirona Dental, will become the CEO over this new company. And I think Dentsply's CEO will now become like the CFO or something like that.
Gotcha.
So they're maintaining some corporate structure across the board. Now, what's
So
interesting?
is this a good thing, you think, or is this a bad thing?
Well, that's what I've kind of been debating on, is now we have, again, a conglomerate, and whether you think Dentsply makes great products or Sirona makes good products or bad products, that's not the point here. The point here is that we have now a company that has positioned itself to be kind of a total all-inclusive dental company.
Right.
Now, we know that has not been the greatest thing in dentistry.
Usually not.
Because, and I know from my experience with companies that have lost the passion of the original dentistry.
We're not naming names.
No, I'm not naming names. Will you?
3M?
3M.
Man.
Like, holy smokes.
We love 3M, but man, it's kind of that's what's happened to them over time, is they've lost that pinpoint, here's where we're going type of accuracy.
You talk to so many people that have been 3M junkies for years. Higher up guys, lab guys that have been tied in with they were the guys that invented zirconium milling. They brought zirconium to the United States of America.
And they pioneered bringing digital impressioning to the operatory. Obviously, now we don't want to say that CEREC wasn't a huge part of that, but they were able to integrate
to bring the
labs,
costs down.
labs and doctors together to work together with getting the best of both worlds, and yes, bringing the cost down, making it affordable. So when we look at this Dentsply Sirona merger, we look at a company like 3M and we say, okay, 3M came in and they bought up SB and they bought other companies, but they kind of lost their way in some ways. And obviously they've still got some awesome stuff. So we're not saying 3M's bad. We're just saying what will happen to Sirona when Dentsply gets a hold of them? What will happen to Dentsply? So let's go through this maybe. What are some of the good things, Wes, that you see of this? And some bad things. Why don't you give me two good things and two bad things or something, and I'll give you a couple of things I see are good and bad.
Anytime you have like a horizontal corporate structure where you have products that are being, that are like-minded projects across the board, and you have one focus, which hopefully is excellence in dentistry, what you have is, like, for instance, they have a preventative line. They have a restorative line, prosthetic line. They have an endodontic line, implant line, orthodontic line, CAD/CAM imaging, treatment centers, and instruments line. So now think about that. Let's say that the implant guys over there at Atlantis, Ankylos, Astratech, Exive say, you know what? We really need to step up our digital impression game.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to talk to 3M. Who are they going to talk to? Sirona. And that's easy to communicate. So if they put the corporate structure, and it sounds like they're already doing some things like this, that's a great thing, is because now you have communication that is horizontal in nature.
Sure.
And not necessarily, you don't have to go outside the company to acquire technology. So the patented information that Sirona has and how they capture data digitally now can influence other companies. Or, for instance, the preventative line could say, well, hey, we want to come up with a preventative product that really helps out maybe the dental implant world in polishing or cleaning around dental implants.
Right.
We need an instrument. So they go over and they say, well, Cero Laser over here, can we start a project with, Atlantis, or Ankylos or Astratech and make it happen?
Right.
Or look at Portrait IP in teeth.
Right.
Like, is there a way that we can incorporate that in? I mean, look, think about the communication there. That's exciting because
It
now
is.
it's very exciting. Now, John, tell me what you think is bad about it.
Well, and I agree with you again. Just to piggyback on that, I think that your bottom line quote on that or feeling on that is that it's collaboration without competition now.
Yes.
Instead of companies saying, well, we'd like to talk with Sirona, but if we do that, then we're going to lose business to them. Now they're able to, and I see that.
Listen to this right here.
Yeah.
You got to hear this. Dentsply Sirona will have over 600 scientists and R&D staff working to accelerate development.
Yeah, and so if it does,
that's huge.
If it does work like that, then great.
Hopefully.
But here's what I see. I have never, and I know that's a strong word because they say never and never say always, but I have never seen a dental company that has bought up a bunch of other companies that has continued innovation the way that they did with any of the individual companies. So
I agree.
I think that
I'll agree with you on that one.
It's always been a business decision. At first,
it's hard to move the elephant when you get bigger.
Right. I remember when Dentsply bought Astratech, for instance, and we were there at the last Astra World Congress in Sweden, and you could hear the scientists, the researchers who had been with Astratech since Per-Ingvar Brannemark and his group lament this, and they didn't really want him to talk about this on stage, but they did anyway. And some of them got up there and they said, we really hope that the R&D does not get put by the wayside.
They said that.
Because we're worried about that. And you worry about, them looking at, say, Sirona and saying, well, we've got a good thing going, so let's not worry about that, and let's kind of push some other direction. And the people that are big Sirona believers, which of course Sirona is, as everybody knows that's involved with them, is very much, you have to be a believer because it's all very much a closed system. So you need to really understand how it works, and the R&D has to be there to continue to innovate and to continue to push Sirona forward. I worry that what'll happen is this company will become so big that it will become about stockholders. And Dentsply already struggles with that, I think, a little bit, because they have a lot of pressures on them to perform. And so will this get to a point where it dumbs down to a lower common denominator, or will these other companies retain their independence and their R&D spirit, and will Sirona would be able to have freedom to do what it wants? I worry that will go away because it has gone away in every, we've talked about this before with Shine buying BioHorizons. I've talked to people BioHorizons. So far, Shine has not come in and changed anything there. So, they just, at this point, they think it's a very good thing. But you just wonder, at what point will corporate look at that and say, hey, we gotta start making changes because it's all about business. So I think it's exciting on one hand, but it worries you. I mean, anytime somebody gets so big,
it does worry me more than it does, I think, excite me. And the transaction, I think it's expected to be completed first quarter of 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they're going through regulatory approval and all that, but it's something to look at, guys.
It'll be interesting to watch what happens. It'll be very interesting to see
what happens over the next year or two. And this thing will not just happen. You will not see changes immediately.
Right. Well, let's talk about small companies. While we're on I want to talk about a company. We're going to get to our next segment, which is product of the week.
So cool, man.
Product of the week, tip of the week, and I want to talk about a company that really came. I mean, this company was, I would say, is one of the great examples in dentistry of a company who came from innovation. From no big company was involved. It was a couple of guys that got together and they invented a product and they started marketing it, and it was a huge success. And that's Isolite and Isolite Systems. And Isolite started off as again just a couple of dentists and an engineer that decided, hey, what if we could make this? It was an idea product, and most idea products fail because no one ever finds a way to market it, and no one ever finds a way to make it really truly work. It's just a great idea, but this company found a way to make it actually work. So what is Isolite? What is the company about? Most people know what this is. It's the ability to have a combination of retraction, built-in suction in one piece. And so There's several different, if you go to Isovac or Isolite Systems website, you'll see that they have several different systems that they sell. They have Isolite, they have IsoDry, and they have Isovac. And they all have their good and their differences and their pros and cons. The classic was Isolite. It has light as well as vacuum built in, as well as suction built in. IsoDry is the same thing except without the light. And then Isovac is kind of a separate thing. It has the same mouthpieces and the same basic design in terms of what it does, but it's a little bit more modular, and it can attach to any high volume suction, and it doesn't have any of the light features or any of that. So why do I love this product? I didn't think this thing really worked. You know, I saw ads. I thought it was just a marketing hype product. And I know this. I'm not this kind of guy, but I went to one of the dental meetings, and they were demoing it. And this was just a couple years.
I've walked by this thing so many times.
Yeah, I mean, so many times. And again, I feel like such an old man.
But every time you show up, it's there.
It's there, and they're doing. So the demo they were doing is they had a guy laying back in the chair, and one of the reps, and he's putting the thing in his mouth, and then he would dare people to come over and pour a full 2-liter or liter bottle of water in his mouth.
Wow, that's cool.
And it would be fine. Like water, basically he's telling you to waterboard him. So I walk by there and I'm watching this. Are you serious? Yeah, and my hygienists are there.
You've got to do this on me. I'll hook myself up and you pour it down.
They're loving it. So they go over and my hygienists are pouring water down this guy's throat. And of course it's working and it's just suctioning out. He's just sitting there and he's just like, I'm good. Not a problem.
No
and he would take
way.
the thing out, and then we would say,
2 liters?
Well, it was like a liter, but it wasn't 2 liters. But I mean, he was like, just pour it out like you're trying to let me drink it. Don't like try to cover me with it. And they're pouring water in there, and it's just suctioning it out. And that doesn't even have anything to do with retraction. That was just the suction. And our hygienists are like, man, sealants. What about sealants? You know, like if you don't want to rubber dam isolate, this could be amazing. So one of my hygienists really pushed for this, and I looked at it and I thought, I think this is going to make sense. So what we ended up buying was the Isovac, and it comes in a pack of 3. And the cool thing about Isovac is it can attach to any high volume suction. So it's very hot swappable between rooms.
How much does this thing cost? I mean, is this expensive?
Well, to get 3, the Isovac comes with 3, and it costs, I think it's $800 for 3 of it.
That's not that bad.
No, and that comes with a bunch of mouthpieces.
You've been hacking on me to buy this thing.
Yeah, and now the IsoDry and the Isolite are more expensive, and the thing that's different about them is their design, each one you buy fits in one operatory. So you buy an Isolite, that is going to have an LED. It has to be installed and kept in one operatory, and then you get individual little mouthpieces or little vacuum tubes that hook up to it, so you can hot swap, like I think it comes with 5 or 6.
Yeah, it comes with 6. Okay.
Yeah, so the difference between the Isovac and the other ones is
I'm showing this on the screen right now, so
the Isolite goes, in the room, or the IsoDry goes in the room, stays in the room, and you just swap these little parts out. The Isovac moves from room to room, and you can use it. Now, we've been using the Isovac. I haven't tried the other two because I really haven't seen. I have plenty of light. I have a headlamp, so I don't really feel like I need that. I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe some people comment on that, guys. If you know that you're using one, maybe you've tried both. I mean, we've just.
So, what do you recommend, like, as far as starting out? Like, if I'm going to buy this thing, because you really have convinced me. I mean, I'm tired of talking about it.
You have to ask what you're going to use it for first.
Okay, let's just say that you're going to use it for. Okay, you've been using it for what?
For hygiene, it's been huge. Scaling the root planing
and class 2 composites, right?
Sure. Now, if you want to use it from a dental perspective, yes, composites, it can be great as an alternative to rubber dam isolation when indicated. I think honestly,
quadrant dentistry though.
No, quadrant dentistry.
What?
I mean, yes. I'm telling you, I wasn't a believer, but I'm using it now for quadrants. I'm using it for kids every time. Every time I see a kid now, no matter what, every single kid I see for restorative.
Now you really want me to make me
every single kid I see with restorative, because we always bite block for kids. Maybe I do. I'm getting it. No, I wish I did. Actually, that'd be a sweet company.
So IsoDry is what you would recommend for me to buy?
Well, Isovac is what I'm using. I'm not saying that's the best one. I'm just saying it's a good way to start because you can use it, and then all you got to do is unplug it and bring it over to your hygienist's room, and she can use it for scaling and root planing or for sealants. They use it for sealants every time now.
I'm calling and buying it.
Check it out, guys. I think it's a great product.
You sold me, man.
All right, well, my job is done here. I'm waiting for the check from Isolite. I'll be just hanging out here. I'll give you my address.
You're saying that this company is still owned independently.
Yeah, it's an independent company, and all you got to do is buy the mouthpieces from them. They cost $1 a piece. So every time you use it, it's about $1, $1.25.
Not
And yeah,
bad.
independent company, good little company. I mean, again, I've drunk the Kool-Aid and it tasted good.
Man, you're a Kool-Aid drinker. Well, my tip of the week is a little bit less, well, expensive. So
I'm glad.
So
give me something cheap to balance out all this stuff
what I'm showing you on the screen here, and I'm going to put up a video of this, and what you're seeing on the screen here is taking a dental impression, but I'm doing one thing here, is I'm using cheek retractors. Now, that's a very interesting concept because when you teach dental impression techniques, they never tell you in dental school, hey, get the cheek retractors, the metal cheek retractors, and that helps you to pull back the lips out of the way. No, you just go into the dental operatory and you take your dental impression.
Right.
Okay. Now, how many times have you walked in, taken a dental impression, and the lip gets in the way, the patient's not relaxed, and you really want to get a good border molded impression, and that's difficult, especially, whenever you've got, you're not doing a dentulous, or you're doing, just a full arch, nice dental impression. So
right.
My recommendation and my tip of the week is cheek retractors during dental impressioning. Now, that seems like a simple concept, but there's actually been companies invent things for this. And actually, I'm looking at a product right now called the Fifth Hand. John, you actually brought this up during the production meeting, and it is something that I'm considering purchasing because it actually takes one hand away from what is required for me, which would be two hands to actually hold the retractors, as you've seen in this video. So basically, the way my tip works is you use metal cheek retractors to hold the lip out and away from the dental arch. You insert the alginate, Impergum, whatever that might be, especially for full arch implant impressions or full arch crown and bridge impressions. This technique works great, but the disadvantage is that you have to have another person in there, and you really don't want to use the patient. However, that does work.
I was just going to ask that if the patient, because it seems like it could work, but it could also be a disaster.
But if you have another dental assistant there, even a front office person, it's best if you have them come in because they know how to pull those lips back, really pull that lip away from the vestibule to allow you to get that alginate, that impression material in there, and really seat it properly. To get that really good hydraulic pressure that you hear about that's so important to shove this. And what we get is amazing dental impressions. In fact, the impression you saw earlier and the impression you're seeing now is one that actually was done using the cheek retractors. But I'm looking at this Fifth Hand thinking, and I'm thinking that's a pretty good little deal for inexpensive. And so my tip of the week is, it's disposable, that type of deal. My tip of the week is cheek retractors for dental impressioning. You might think that sounds kind of cornball, but I'm telling you, it is a pearl of the dental practice that I think takes your dental impressions to the next level. And the first thing the lab will tell you that the hardest thing to deal with is what, John? Crappy dental impressions.
Oh yeah, too much.
Terrible dental impressions.
So this is really making me because this is something that is making me rethink some of my impressions with my assistants after hearing you talk about it, because I think that what do you maybe deal with the most in terms of frustrating impressions for assistants is a big lip that wants to drop down.
Yeah, they take that impression, they hand it to you, and they're like, hey, doc, I got you a preliminary dental impression for your wax up, and you see an impression of the lip and hair.
Right, exactly.
How does that happen?
Right, and the tray was sized properly. It's not a tray size problem.
It's not necessarily their fault. It's just a technique, a little tip there that can help them get that out of the way.
That's great. I love it. I mean, this is easy. It's quick. And it costs you nothing, basically, and it looks like it really, especially for diagnostic impressions and even for finals, I'm going to start using it on my full arch implant impressions. I've never done that before, but next time I take a full arch implant impression, I'm going to be all over it.
Yep, it totally makes sense. It's a great tip. So cheek retractors or the Fifth Hand, which I'll come back and do a follow-up product review on that when I purchase that product, but it's good stuff, man.
It's been a great show, Wes.
Yeah, I really think dentures are exciting because you know what? It's all about 8 and 9. And once you learn to position 8 and 9, you can do veneers, You can do workups. We know from the education we've received that the positioning of 8 and 9 in the lip and the position of that makes a big deal. And what we want to hear from you guys is, do you want to hear more about the denture process? Do you want us to geek out on like some studies about dentures and this modified branching technique, the full branching technique, more about HydraCast and a step-by-step approach? We also want you to like and share this across all social media groups. I mean, that's what this is all about, is sharing information with other people, learning, challenge us, ask us questions.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to you. We're leaving the emails. We're leaving the Twitter. We're leaving the Facebook for you guys to start a little forum here of just dental education. Teaching others is what it's all about, to take dentistry to the next level. And that's what we're about at the Dental Guys. So this has been a great show, John. Thanks so much for the time you put into this. I mean, we've been talking about this one for a long time, and it's been a great one. And I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy.
And this is another wrap. See ya.
See ya.